Our guest today is Gabe DaSilva of the DaSilva Group. We go way back. I would call it way back. How are you, my man?
Excellent, brother. I'm excited to be here, ready to jam.
Yeah, appreciate you being one of the first guests on Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. How long have we known each other now? Probably going on 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. All right. Well, give our listeners a little background on you. I actually know a lot of my listeners know you, but let's hear it from you. How'd you get started? Because it feels like you've been in real estate forever, but you really haven't.
No, 7 years. And my story is not unlike yours. I grew up in and around real estate and construction. I learned the trades from my pops and went the college route, went the finance route, did a whole host of things in financial services, wore a suit to the trading floor in the city. I did all that nonsense. I logged 10 years in corporate finance and financial services, bouncing around, and then took my first stab at entrepreneurship. And that wasn't in real estate, that was in food service, and did that for 4 years, ultimately sold that business to a partner, and then transitioned into real estate, like I said, 7 years ago. So I've bounced around a lot. It wasn't a straight shot. It wasn't like the real estate bug bit me and I just like right out of undergrad got into it or whatever. Yeah. I just found my way here by happenstance.
Did you, I mean, I know we've talked about this, but did you similar to me, like not realize how much you learned from your dad until you actually got into real estate? And then you were like, oh, okay, I was always learning, but I didn't realize I was learning.
Yes, 1,000%. So much of, you just absorb so much of that stuff subconsciously, being like around him on job sites, like watching over his shoulder as he's like reviewing bids and proposals and contracts and things. And then like the lexicon, especially, that's when I really knew, wow, like I did absorb so much more than I realized. I speak this language already.
That's a big thing too, don't you think? I mean, for those of us who kind of work off market, and when you get in rooms with other investors, you pretty much know right away who knows what. It's either the new investors are just going to use all the acronyms that none of us have ever heard of or care about, and all of us are talking old school terms, and you know right away, okay, this person's been around for a while.
Yeah, I think that was more apparent on the construction side when I was going on jobs earlier on. Then when I was, because that's more so how I started, then started finding myself in those rooms with real estate investors and was able to speak intelligently about construction, which surprisingly most real estate investors can't. And so that was a great differentiator for me, learning the construction side first and then kind of bringing that to the investment side.
Yeah. Do you think that your background like that is what made it easier to get into what we'll get to, of course, which is more at a level and construction based higher end flips rather than normal flippers get started, you know, punching a little bit of stuff around, but you got into the fix and flip with the at a level pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's an inherent comfort level that comes from having been on job sites as a kid and then like stepping into your first project and having that one be a full gut reno versus like a paint and carpet type job. And then rolled right into at a level additions, new constructions, like quickly scaled because I had that comfort level.
Yeah. And I mean, scaling is such an interesting term for me because in the real estate world, we see like new investors thinking about scaling before they even know what they're doing. It's a much different terminology for you because to scale for you meant using existing relationships and resources that you had and the back knowledge in order to push your business forward. And that's what one of the things I've always admired for you. You're always looking to adjust and go to something bigger. I remember, you know, like obviously we follow each other on social and I'm like, I remember you're like, going to stop doing this, doing something bigger. And then I saw commercial stuff coming. I'm like, okay, I like it. Is that something that, I mean, again, having the background in it, I think makes it easier to transition. But what is it about these parts of real estate that always make you look for something maybe more efficient or more prolific in terms of what you can get out of it?
Well, I think that, and you've likely heard me say this before, like you don't have to do more of what you did to get where you are, to get where you ultimately want to go. And so you can become like the one trick pony and just really over-index on one strategy in one asset class. And we did, and we were guilty of that early on. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can definitely scale there, but there's a cap. And it's like, do you want to then just grow your team and then another project manager, another admin to then do 8 more of the same kind of projects? And, that's a question for everybody to answer for themselves. For me, it was, okay, you've got this pretty dialed in. Let's let that thing continue to run kind of on autopilot. But let's not scale that. Let's go take the skill set that we've honed there with that asset class, doing that specific strategy, and let's take it to the next level, which is commercial for us. Or some people are scaling into self-storage, or they're going to do developments, multifam development deals. So yeah, I like to grow. Like, I'm growth centric. The 6 basic human needs, growth is my number one.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's pretty obvious from just watching you. I mean, I remember when you did 75 hard for the first time, and then all of a sudden you're doing marathons. I'm like, what is with this guy? I thought you were supposed to be getting older. Are you getting younger? Because I'm concerned. I think that you are. I
am biologically, physiologically getting younger. My blood work shows it. My biomarkers suggest that I'm actually aging in reverse.
Yeah, but that's interesting because, I mean, the background for this show is the mindful approach to real estate. And as I've watched you, you've changed your mindfulness. All of us were in the hustle and grind culture, especially even when we started as real estate investors. But I've seen a big change in you in terms of what you want to get out of life and how you want it to be not necessarily easier, but more efficient for what the long-term goal is. But that was not just with investing. Do you think that the focus that you've taken on yourself, and your health and everything else has helped you become better at the investing, at the whole portal of investing that you're looking at?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a direct correlation. Like, how you feel physically is going to translate into everything else that you do. How you feel mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, those things, everything bleeds into everything else. So for me, I was not in good physical shape, and I was hustling and grinding and burning it at both ends, coming straight from the restaurant, logging 16-hour days to transitioning into real estate, and then having to make up for lost time and just grinding and more deals. Bought 8 deals on my birthday month, and then said, wait a second, like, I can't take down 8 ADA levels, 8 new construction type projects. These are big rehabs. And that was that, like, okay, so how do I do more without like having to do more work? Like, how do I accomplish more without having to do more? And there's a way to do that.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when you get good at something, including the off-market marketing and getting people, and negotiating, getting the deals, you end up with more than a handful, like you said, and then you have to figure out. I think we talked about it on the show that we did on wholetailing. When you got to those 8, you decided you needed to start to offload some of those, right? Because there's no way you can take down all the deals and do all the rehabs.
Yeah, well, I knew that what would that look like operationally, and I was not signing up for that. What it took to get to where we were, having to double that effort, there was better ways to get those results. And wholetailing some of those opportunities to other investors was the move. And I'm glad that I did that, and it allowed us to pivot.
Yeah. I mean, and we talked about that back on Gabe's podcast. And so wholetailing is a little different than wholesaling. You're going to double close those and do the rehab, more of a lipsticks thing, and sell it to an investor who wants to do it. But again, it helps when you're licensed to be able to do that as well. So I'm looking through my Zen questions for you. And I want to start with this one. What is the most important trait for a real estate investor to have? Your answer is grit. I love it. Tell us why and why that's helped you, and what if you're coaching other investors, which you are, and we'll get into that. How do you coach someone to have grit? Because that seems like something that you just have to come to the table with, or you can develop, in some other ways.
Mm-hmm. So I think grit is the quintessential entrepreneur's trait. It doesn't have to be for real estate investors. I think it's just entrepreneurs in general. You need to be gritty because this entrepreneurship in general and real estate investing in particular, it's about kind of like showing up, getting kicked in the teeth, pivoting, adjusting, showing up again. And you have to be relentless. You have to be willing to show up day after day and be able to problem solve and pivot. And if you're gritty, you'll show up and you'll find the solution, whether that's, the walls presented, you're going to go over it, under it, around it, and, through it if you absolutely have to. I attribute that to the grittiness. Can it be taught? I think that I'm a testament to you can teach an old dog new tricks. I was not very disciplined. I was always quite gritty, but now I've really cultivated this discipline, this discipline muscle, and it had atrophied over years. And so if I can become disciplined and be gritty, someone else who's disciplined can become gritty. I believe that that's very much possible.
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes to motivation, but I think sometimes an investor or anyone, like you said, in any business needs to get that motivation from either coaching or relationships with other people in the same business who can see like, oh, okay, that person's doing that. Because I feel like with real estate investing and on the agent side, people think it's going to be a lot easier than it is. You know, everybody talks about, oh, you know, you're going to make passive income for your whole life. I've never seen anything really that's passive. And if you pay, I don't want to pay for it. That just doesn't, it's not really passive because the building can break at any time. You have to do something. So yeah, I do think, is that something? So tell us a little bit about your coaching and how that developed. Because I know it developed slowly, but then you really got going with the fix and flip, and now you have really a group that goes. And yeah, I think that coaching, masterminds, mentorship are the ways that you can teach things that you didn't think people could actually learn, because you can only learn from watching other people who are doing it. You know.
Yeah, there's so much there to unpack, and I am a product of masterminds, mentors, and coaches. So clearly, I'm going to advocate for them. And the people will often say, like, you learn from your mistakes. Like, how idiotic is that? You could learn from someone else's mistakes, right? Like, why do you have to go and replicate the mistake? Avoid the mistake. I want to have someone, you know, each time I foray into a new project, new asset class, something like that, I seek out a coach or a mentor who's been there, who's gone there before me, and then have them tell me what I don't know. Like, you don't know what you don't know. You need someone to kind of guide you and give you those things to look out for. And that's, you know, ideally that's what I'm doing for my students. I'm also transferring confidence as a coach and mentor who's already gone there. You have to be able to then articulate to the student how you did it in a way that they can replicate, and you have to transfer confidence to them so they can go and execute on the blueprint that you're providing them. I mean, we can spend a ton of time on that, and we can unpack that, you know, as deep as you want to go on that. But I'm genuinely committed as a coach and mentor to seeing 50 students quit their jobs, and we're on our way. You know, a lot of the folks that come into my program are W-2'd, and they want out. Yeah. And these ADA levels, these new constructions, these big additions, these kinds of projects with 6-figure spreads, that's how these guys and girls get out of their W-2, not a 20K cosmetic rehab.
Right. But I mean, the fine line is that you need the money from the W-2 to keep it going until you can get the asset class that you want. And this is exactly what you're teaching them. If you can go bigger, but you do it with the confidence. The one thing I wanted to drop back on is, you know, for me as a coach, and for running a team, I'm always looking for people who are coachable. I can't coach someone who's not coachable. So to know that people are coachable, you can take them anywhere. I really think so. You know as well as I do from us both having coaches, when I hire a coach and I'm going to spend money on a coach, or I engage in mentorship where I'm expecting something, I need to be an open book for it. You know, and I think that's how we can learn so fast. Have you had that experience? I know I've seen you at a ton of masterminds. I mean, you just want to soak up all the information, but if you're not open, as we've both seen, you know, people can come to us and say, hey, you know, I want help to do X, Y, and Z. And then you tell them, well, okay, here's your first step. And they're like, well, I mean, I don't really want to do that. I want to do it the way I want to do it. And I'm like, well, you're not coachable.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. When you're the student, you ought to be doing more listening than talking. And so I know what rooms I'm in, and I know when I'm there to learn. I also know when it's my turn to teach and lead. And so if the student isn't open and is unwilling to listen, I'm going to know, like, they're not coachable. And there's only so much we can do for them, right? Especially if they're not open. If you go back to EOS, right? Traction, Entrepreneur's Operating System, they get it, want it, and capacity to do it. They call it the GWC. Well, if they get it, they don't want it, and they have capacity, they can't be helped. Like, you have to want it, and then we can help you get it and understand it, and then we can help build the capacity to do it. But the want piece, like, you can't want it for anybody else.
Yeah, I feel like there's like the wanting to do something is one thing, and then willing to do the work to get it is another, which is very common in all aspects of real estate. Well, I want the carrot that's at the end of that stick, but I mean, I didn't realize I'm going to have to do the work to get it. Can't you just get it for me? They want to pay, I can coach you to do it, but I'm not going to do it for you. I'm doing it for myself. So that's
Well, you have a lot of, like in our world, right, with the find, fund, fix, flip. Finding deals is everybody's challenge, the pipeline and all. And what you come to find out is that what they really want are easy deals.
Exactly.
Because they say they want deals and there's no deals to be had. And then we'll do a 2-hour screen share where I'll go mine the MLS, which everybody's got access to, or Zillow. You don't even have to have MLS access, but all my students generally have MLS. And we'll go and find a deal over the course of 2 hours. And there's nothing I'm doing that they couldn't be doing, but work, everything works if you work it. And, they want the easy deals. And not all of them, but that's a common theme.
Yeah. And again, some can be coached up to do the work and some can't. But I do think that's like, obviously we're going to get to what one of the things that you think is wrong with the investing world, which again, I agree with. But I do feel like, new investors, if you're a brand new investor and you pop into some like $50,000 coaching system, that's not a coaching system. That's expensive. You're paying because you want something to an asset to appear before you, but that's not how it works. I mean, I learned so much before I paid for anything. And then it's like, once you know what you're doing, to pay for something is smart. You're going to take X and get to X plus 10. And that's the goal of coaching. So sliding over to one thing that you think is wrong with the real estate investing world right now, your answer, HGTV. I agree. I mean, I like the shows, but why is this making it so much harder on us as flippers?
They are in the business of selling ads, right? So they're not educating people. They're setting false expectations, creating this hopium, right? And then so people watch, and both sides. You've got investors that are watching and thinking that they can do a flip in 30 minutes, and then you've also got sellers watching and thinking, well, like my little turd box must be worth $500,000 because of what I saw on HGTV. And it's just, I think it's entertainment. At the end of the day, it's entertainment. So they're not serving us as investors, and they're not serving the sellers either. People who are watching it as a release and to decompress is one thing. But if that's where you're getting your information as an investor, you're going to the wrong place.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame people for wanting everything perfect, but I think especially for first-time home buyers, it makes them think they can do renovations for $20,000 that cost $100,000 because they're spread on the show and what the show's paying for. Again, I do think, that's with all things. Everything's really entertainment to be consumed either online or there, but it does make it harder for us. I think, I wonder if you think this. I found, from what Jenny and I talk about when we're turning out our flips that, because there's so many bad flippers that when you do a flip, they're coming in with like an eagle eye expecting for you to have cut corners everywhere. And you're like, I have a whole renovation list with everybody's name on it. You can contact them all, but they're really trying to come to get you or something, even though they love the house. Have you had that experience as well, especially in the ADA levels?
Yeah, we have. I think that's the one thing that HGTV has been good for us is like design, inspiration, like aesthetic and things that we see there that we can replicate. So kudos to them for that and providing us those ideas. But then the folks come in. A lot of times we're also selling stuff at 850, a million, 1.2, 1.5. That's a discerning buyer, likely coming with an agent who does 20 or 30 of those a year. So they've got kind of like a discerning eye. So they're coming with the intention of picking apart your product anyway at that price point. Yeah. But to your point, we're ready. We do everything right. We don't cut corners. A lot of times if you walk into something, and we see a lot of other, people's flips, and if they have terrible trim and tile, that's the stuff that's visible. Like I'm scared to imagine what's buried beneath the walls.
Yeah, that's actually a good one, though. What are some tip-offs for you when you walk into somebody else's flip, and we'll go through them together? What are some tip-offs where you walk in and you're like, oh, no, this is a cheap one, or there's a problem here? I agree. Like, to me, one of the things you mentioned that I'll go first on that is like when I see they use the same tile in like 3-4 places, I know they just bought a box load at discount and they're just trying to like use it up. Like, bro, keep it for another project. Don't use it in 5 different rooms in the house. Like, it's enough. I've seen it already. Like, it's not novel anymore. What's another one where you know right away when you get in there?
Well, with the tile, it's the grout lines. If they're too thick or if they're not straight, because that's a lazy installer's strategy. The trim, if the cuts aren't quite flush, that's usually a giveaway. Then fixtures, if the fixtures aren't mounted where they're supposed to be mounted, they're not centered over mirrors, they're not centered over islands.
That drives me crazy. Stuff. Yeah, that's insane though. That type of stuff is like such a lack of attention to detail. It's crazy. Like if an island's off center in the kitchen, you're just like, how did who measured this? What are you doing? And then you just leave it. There's a house around the corner for me, right across the street from Jenny now, where like I walked by the other day. I was leaving her house, and I'm like, are those the upper windows and the lower windows like are not aligned? And she's like, no, they are. And then we walk straight, and we're like, no, they're not aligned. They're like the ones are like 12 inches to one side. That seems crazy.
That's a miss. That's clearly a miss.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if you agree on this. I think that there's a lot of, bad actors in real estate, bad wholesalers, bad everything, bad agents. But a lot of people just try to say like, oh, investors are getting screwed all the time. There's terrible investors out there. I mean, these bad flippers make it much harder for us to flip when we're not cutting corners when you go and people are cutting corners. So it's hard to blame people for kind of sniffing around our projects when there are a lot of bad ones out there. I think ours look like obviously done correctly, but everybody's looking for something these days.
Yeah, it's to be expected. But if you do the things right, then you're on the right side of that. Yeah.
In terms of the way to make investing better for everybody, you said educate, and obviously that's part of your coaching and training and Facebook group. For a brand new investor who's looking to get into the business, what do you think the best first step for a brand new investor is? Like, where should they go? What should they do? Because we were there at one point. What should they do?
So they need to consume, but not so much that they don't execute. Like, so I would say there's a lot of places where you can go and you can get good intel. HGTV is not one of them, but there's places like the places you and I are constantly providing content and putting things out, like our YouTubes and things like that. They can find stuff there. They can find podcasts as well. I would say there's places you can go, but the fear and what I often find is that they get like, it's analysis paralysis, right? They just consume so much and they don't execute. So I would say first, consume enough. You don't need to know everything, right? Like you know where you want to go, right? All you need is step 1 and 2. And then you know what step 100 looks like, the finished flip. So just take step 1, then 2, and then 3, 4, and 5. They'll play themselves out. And so you don't necessarily need to know all that. What you can do to make sure that you're taking the right steps in the right order is bring along someone who's gone before, who's been there before you. And so that's what I would say for them to do. And that whole thing of buy somebody coffee, try and pick someone's brain, like that type of stuff, it falls flat on me, and I'm sure it does on you too. These are not the kinds of things that like we're going. What we want is someone who leads with value and is going to show up and say, hey, I see a gap that I can fill. I have a unique skill set. I see something in your organization that I can provide you value. And boom, there you go. Like now there's an alignment there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when a lot of new investors, or even, not necessarily new, but starting to scale investors, when they're looking for mentorship, they just want a mentor. But like, if I'm going to mentor you, what are you going to offer me? What special set of skills or something do you have where we can have a win-win? Because I don't really want the money out of that if it's just a mentor thing. I want something out of the relationship too. So I totally agree with that. I think a lot of people, like we were saying before, they just want the easy way and the easy path. But it's people that are going to get you there. Like you said, if you can go on site because you know one person who's flipping and you can just see what they're doing, you're going to learn way more in that on-site visit than you're going to learn, reading books. The books are great, and looking at properties online and running numbers and calculators are cool, but you don't know what those numbers mean until you get out into the field and really see. When you go into a dump, you know what it smells like. It doesn't smell good, and when you're standing on a floorboard in an attic, like, this feels like uneasy. When you go in a basement, like, wow, okay, there's no structural support there. Those are things you can't tell online because there's no photos of stuff like that.
And to your original question, what can they do if they're getting started? They can do exactly that, because one thing that they have more of that you and I don't, and other, coaches and mentors who are busy don't, is time. And so they can go and see the things on site, do the photos, do the property walkthroughs that we can't get to. And then that's the value add. Then send that over to us in a Google Drive. So just be irreplaceable, and whatever it is that your giftedness is, step into that and figure out how you can use that to benefit the person who you're trying to learn from.
Yeah. I mean, I don't drink coffee, so I never want a coffee, and I don't really want to leave the house that much. So, I mean, there's really no lure in saying, hey, can I take you to coffee? It's like, that's like asking me to talk on the phone. I'd just rather never do that in my whole life. So, yeah. All right, let's hit up forced appreciation. For your rehabs, the thing that you really became obsessed with in terms of the ADA level is forced appreciation. So for anyone who doesn't know, can you just explain forced appreciation and why it became so important for you in your projects as opposed to what the maybe lighter rehabs do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the easiest way to explain it is with like a tactical example. It's you're buying, in our case, we're buying these 3-bed, 1.5 bath capes, and we're forcing appreciation by adding square footage, turning it into a 4 or a 5-bed, 3.5 bath. And so you're not even comping the same house. Whereas if you were just going in and doing cosmetics and you were going to, you start with a 3-bed, 1.5 bath, you sell a 3-bed, 1.5 bath, there's only so much you can do there.
Right.
Versus this add a level or an addition or, the value add, construction heavy, forced appreciation type stuff that, we do and teach. It's not even the same product. You're comping the 3 1.5 cape to the 5 3.5 colonial you're creating.
Yeah.
And so, there's the forced appreciation.
When you're buying one of those capes, are you looking for a block that already has larger properties, so you're not automatically becoming the biggest on the block right away, which still may be okay, but are you looking for blocks that can support that larger construction, and then that will help with your variances and anything you need if there's other houses that are large on the block as well? I feel like you're at a pool hall right now, right?
Yeah. We're in our business center here, and there's some folks having fun. So we'll keep playing through it.
Yeah, we're just going to knock it out.
The other thing I'll say about that is it's the neighborhood. So like knowing the neighborhood and then knowing whether or not it'll sustain the ARV. You don't have to necessarily be on the same street, but just being in the neighborhood and knowing that like, okay, this market can sustain this product if I create it. Don't be the first in the neighborhood. Clearly that's not safe.
Yeah.
That's a risk you don't need to be taking. You'll likely see something that someone else did for themselves, not as an investor necessarily, but a couple that like grew into a bigger house, and they've set the tone, and you can kind of leverage that as you go and create your own product.
Yeah. So something interesting we talked when we just hopped on before that I think a lot of people are considering. So you just got rid of your house and you're doing something different. That's everyone always thinks like, oh, you're just going to keep houses for your whole life. What did you do now, and why did you do it in terms of how you're using your assets and how you want to organize your life? Because I think it's relevant for the long-term scale of real estate investors. You get to different parts and you figure out what's going to be best for that year and going forward, and then you can always switch. But you did something that maybe other people wouldn't think about doing. There you go.
My primary residence, it was, we had done it as a flip, and then I fell in love with your flip, the one thing they tell you never to do. Yeah. And so it actually benefited us greatly as a result of appreciation, the forced appreciation we created with the actual renovation, but then the market, of course, did what it did. But what I saw was an opportunity to sell at what I thought was close to the top. Like the whole thing of trying to pick tops and bottoms, like clearly if you've ever bought a stock, you're likely not that good at that, right? Unless that's what you absolutely do for a living. So we sold, we caught the top, and things have since leveled out. And my intention was to be liquid. And so I didn't necessarily need that particular house in that particular neighborhood. Don't have kids in those schools. Didn't make sense to pay those taxes. But so we freed up a ton of capital. And so now, he who has the most dry powder in recession is king. And so, that Warren Buffett saying. And so right now we're sitting on a lot of liquidity, a lot of cash that we can, deploy.
Yeah, same with me. I mean, on recording date, it's July 6th, 2022. We're both in the same boat. I liquidated a ton during the pandemic. And I think it's one thing they said is interesting. We're never going to know what the top is. And I like it if I sell at what I think is the top is, and then someone buys and they make money too. That's just like a win-win. I don't need all the appreciation. I just want to get some and get out. But I mean, some of my best deals in my whole life have been on houses that I've lived in. And I think that that's what some investors don't realize. You don't have to be an investor with, 50 doors to be successful. I've doubled my money on several personal residences by just buying in smart areas, doing renovations, like you said, forcing appreciation, but then also getting the long-term appreciation of living there, which means enjoyment also. Like, I like to enjoy. It's like, if you're going to buy Airbnbs, why don't you use them? That's what they're there for. They're nice.
And a lot of those portfolio plays, that whole thing of acquiring doors, if that's your sole strategy, you often look great on paper, but there's no real liquidity there. Like, yeah, you can liquidate the assets, but those folks look good on paper and they're not flush with cash, which in this particular climate, I would argue you want to be. So
yeah, I feel like there's very few investors that you don't know of who will say, I have 100 doors, and that means they own 100% of the 100 doors. So in my opinion, if you own 10% of 100 doors, you have 10 doors, not 100. So stop trying to tell me that you have 86 doors when that's not actually the case. There's a big difference. Stake. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Let me get that off the screen there. Thanks. All right. So what's next for you? I mean, what projects are you working on now, and what are you looking to kind of transition to? Didn't you get into commercial for a little while? Was that what you started to when you were thinking of maybe getting away from the ADA levels?
Yeah, we acquired a commercial building. We're retrofitting it for a daycare. It's not unlike what we were doing in the residential space. So it's going to be like a heavy lift from a construction standpoint, but that's what we like, and we know that that's how we can force appreciation. So we're actually transitioning out of most of our single family stuff, partly because of where we are in the market, but also because we want to be liquid and be able to jump on these bigger opportunities, inclusive of development sites, taking a parcel, getting it approved, getting the entitled paper, working through all that front end stuff with the professional service providers, the architects, the engineers, the traffic, and then whether or not we go on and develop those, I suspect we'll cherry pick the ones that make sense for us, the ones that we would actually want to keep. Yeah. And then we could also sell that entitled paper to other developers who don't want to do the front end legwork.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I mean, I like it. I mean, again, that goes back to what we talked about. I feel like you are so invested in growth, not just for yourself, but you're also looking like, how can I grow inside real estate, better returns, smarter options out there. I've started to look a lot more at like this kind of commercial as well, just because I think that's a good asset class right now after the pandemic. There's so much commercial real estate available. Why aren't I looking at that? I like mixed use just because I like get a little bit of both, play with. I'd rather pass on the tenants, but it's okay.
Right. Yeah. Especially with what happened through COVID. Those that saw the opportunity to stop paying and did. I think that a well-diversified investment strategy has all the different asset classes covered. Like, you would ideally have a piece of a GP stake in a 300 unit in Nashville, right?
Yeah.
Like, you would have that in your portfolio along with a couple of local duplexes and triplexes, along with a couple of big flips every year. I think that it's wise to diversify.
Yeah. Just dropping back to your background, when you started and then to now, how did your financing adjust over time? Because I think all investors are always interested in how all these deals, especially as we do bigger deals, get financed. How did your financing adjust over time? What do you use now versus what you had to use in the beginning, which is a lot of people had to use hard money, and you can make a lot of mistakes with hard money.
Mm-hmm. And I was one of those people. I had to use hard money. I didn't have, the rich uncle that I could tap for financing for my projects. I started at 3 and 13 on my very first rehab, and the last hard money loan we did on a new construction was 1 1/4 and 9. Those were the terms I got.
For everybody else, the first number is the points that you're paying, and then the last is the percentage on the loan.
Yeah. And now we still have those hard money relationships, but we've been fortunate to be able to build out a nice following. And also we've been performing for long enough where private money partners are now willing to lend. So we're able to we could do big raises privately. And that's bringing in, 4 investors on a project, and each of them with 100 or 200 contributing to the same project. So, and here's another thing, something I advocate for and work with my coaching clients and students a ton is like present the opportunity in a way that makes it appealing to them. What are they getting out of it? Not like, what do you need? Or, I need 8%. I need to borrow 100K, 8%. How does that serve them? Think about the opportunity and how you can present it to them in a way that's going to be of service to them, the lender. The big distinction.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I think it also goes back to what we were talking about with mentorships. You want a win-win, do both sides see a win in this project? And when I'm in off market, buying direct from sellers, I always use those words. I want to do a fair transaction. I want to find a win-win. Where are you going? How can I help? Are you doing a bunch of still doing off-market marketing, or are there deals more just coming to you now?
Now, most of the stuff is finding us is organic. We have and always will have our paid marketing channels, but we're never going to spin up a big wholesale style outbound paid marketing campaign. That's not what we want. I don't want to have a bunch of acquisition managers and cold callers and things like that. What we have been really good about is we document what we do. We say what we do what we say. And as a result, we find that a lot of deals come to us organically. And that's a testament to doing it over time. Like, people are like, well, that's great because that's you. Well, that's great because it's me now. But for years, that was me slowly building up momentum, right? And positioning myself as the guy that buys these beat capes, ranches, and bungalows and does out of levels. And so anyway, it's a long game.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think short-term thinkers lose in all aspects of investing. You always sell too early, get nervous, or you win a little. I like to win a lot. I'm okay with holding. But if I've already won a lot in the short term, I'm happy to sell. Like I said, if somebody else wins, that's okay too. Well, tell everybody about your coaching program and any ways to get in touch with you so we can make sure to drive people your way.
Yeah. So on all the socials, Real Gabe DaSilva. And so that's me on Instagram and Facebook, and on YouTube as well. They can find me there. If they're interested in the fix and flip space in particular and the forced appreciation model you and I were talking about, we have a free Facebook group called Fix and Flip Foundation.
I'm in there.
Be able to find it. Yeah,
I'm in there. The thing I hate Facebook so much, and like other groups are so bad, and then I go in there and I'm like, oh, this is really good, but like Facebook sucks. I hate it so much, or Meta, whatever it is.
I know nobody's active on it. The young folks, I was just speaking to someone who might intern with us over the summer, and when I mentioned Facebook, he rolled his eyes because the young folks don't use it anymore. It's like a boomer app.
Yeah.
They call it a boomer app. What we're doing different in that group, it's a free group, and we encourage people to come in. And it doesn't matter where you are on your fix and flip journey. If you've done 1 or 100, it doesn't matter. But inside of that group, each day we're consciously making an effort to bring value to the folks in there. And in fact, tonight when you and I wrap, I'm jumping onto a live inside of that group.
Oh, awesome!
And interviewing one of our students who recently quit his job. Like I was saying, I want to see 50 people quit their jobs and be have a hand in that. It's them doing it. I'm not doing it for them, but I want to have a hand in that. And so anyway, we're going to interview somebody inside of the group tonight who did just that. I would say if they're interested in the fix and flip world, that's a great place. My YouTube, The Build, a docu-series that we created there. They can go there and have fun with that. And that's free education. Just watch that. It's the real deal. It's not.
It's a more realistic. Right. I do like HGTV for the aesthetics, and I like watching it. I just think that it is entertainment. But yeah, if you watch Gabe's series, The Build, you're going to get the real nuts and bolts. It's not easy at all to do that all the time. Lots of things happen that you wish didn't happen. Don't you think just on a side note, even now at this level of experience on every new project, you're learning something new, right? I feel like I always am. There's never something where I'm not going to learn anything. Something bad's going to happen. I have to fix it.
Yeah. What I find that after time I learn more of is how to, streamline, how to become more efficient. I don't feel like I get blindsided as much as we did early. in our journey. But now we're seeing these little tweaks that like just micro adjustments that are making us that much more efficient, saving us that much more money, making us faster. And I love that as an operations guy, as an integrator, like that speaks to my soul.
Yeah, awesome. And what's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it DM, phone, email? What way do you want people to get in touch with you? Because if it's me, everyone knows I'll never answer a phone call ever. Even if you're in my phone book, I'm not answering that.
No, the calls, I too don't do much of the phone. I would probably say my DMs are the best place. I still get all my own messages. I still process all my own messages. If I'm a day or two behind, that's a lot. Typically I'm turning everything around in 24 hours. So, folks can hit me there at Real Gabe DaSilva in DMs or Messenger. If they do have Facebook, we're active there as well.
Yeah, but P.S. don't come in either of our DMs trying to sell something. Like Instagram's just a hotbed of DMs. Like, I don't need followers. I don't need X and Y. Come with value. I think that we both said that enough on this episode. Like, if you want to build a relationship with somebody, bring something of value. I mean, when we first got in touch, it was we probably knew each other through other sources. And then, we were in that,
virtual workshop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we spoke on a panel.
We're all like the seats were in. I felt like I was in another virtual world playing around. And then we did your podcast right after that. But I mean, I think, our relationship is a testament to that. Sometimes you don't know, of someone, and then and you're like, oh, wow, we have a lot of commonalities. And neither of us has ever tried to sell anything to each other. So it's a good note for people who come for the DMs. Like, just ask us a good question. And make it based on evidence you've learned. The best question isn't, hey, how do I get started in flipping? The best question is, hey, I've done X, Y, and Z research. I started this project. Here's the one thing that I ran into. Are you able to help me with that? I love that. I'll answer that question all day. Don't you agree? That's such a better way to ask someone for help it really can't be like a book, but cut to the chase, but give us some background and let us know that you've actually done stuff instead of we're just trying to pave the path for you.
Spot on. I love that. I like to see that some effort was put in. And if you made a mistake or you got stuck somewhere and you're asking for help, there's nothing we want to do more as a coach or mentor or just generally a good person is like step in and say, hey, I know where you're stuck. I was stuck there too. Here's what I did. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. I think you're adding so much value. The fix and flip space is so difficult. Jenny and I are always trying to tell people on our calls, like, this is just hard stuff. It's not for the faint hearted. You can lose all your money. We see them all the time, half done flips. It's because they miscalculated the rehab costs. They bought in too high, especially in the last 2 years. Deals are scarce unless you know where to look for them. What's next for you? What's the next big project that you're going to work on? Are you still obviously working on that commercial one that you talked to us about? Yeah,
and shifting our focus now that we've developed this core group of professional service providers, the same thing that you need on your team, the things that you need on your team in the retail space and residential, I should say, right? Like a good attorney partner, a good architect, a good engineer. Well, those residential partners are not the same in the commercial world.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've spent the last year curating this group, this team that can now go and attack these bigger projects and say, okay, well, we just did an assemblage of 3 lots. Let's go for the density variance and let's figure out how to put 28 units here. And then we'll get that entitled paper and we'll sell that or we'll develop. And that's the shift for us now. That's where we're headed.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. This is your one last tip. So if these new real estate investors or seasoned investors who just are always worked up, this is Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What's one tip that you could give anyone listening that could help them develop just a more mindful approach to real estate investing? Because that's really the reason why I started this. I feel like I'm always in Zen mode because people say I have this ILDNC. I literally do not care, which doesn't mean what people think, but not much really bothers me. What's one thing that you can say, and I know that you've developed these things over the years, to help people have a more mindful approach to this whole spectrum of real estate investing?
I'm going to throw them a curveball, and I'm going to say movement. 15 minutes of movement a day. If you're sedentary and don't do anything, just that alone, and it'll transfer into your mindfulness. You will clearly feel better. If you're sedentary, which most folks are, it permeates through everything that you do. So if you want to be more mindful about how you do real estate or anything else in your life, start your day with 15 minutes of movement. And I couldn't advocate enough for that.
I agree. I think some of our best ideas come when we're moving. I mean, some of the most famous writers and poets walk like 6-8 hours a day because that's where all the stuff comes from. But you got to get out there and do it. I'd agree. If you're just never moving, you're just going to generally feel more depressed because there's just nothing going on. You're sitting at the computer doing analysis paralysis too much. Get up, take a walk, think about all the things you want to do, and then develop a nice core message to people like us that really adds some value and brings something. All right, man. Really appreciate you taking the time today on the podcast. That was Gabe DaSilva of the DaSilva Group. He's told you everywhere to find him. I tell you, you should go find him on all the socials. There's a lot of good stuff on there, and definitely watch the build on his YouTube channel. I'm going to make him stick around for the most uncomfortable part of the podcast where we just talked about it before. Really, if you like the podcast only, you should subscribe and share it with your friends. If you don't like it, no problem. None of us really care. It's okay. We're going to be fine. But if you really do find that this mindful approach to real estate investing is going to be of value to you, subscribe now, let people know. If you feel like giving us a 5-star review, that's fine. But really, just only do the 5 stars. There's really of no help to do anything else. So if you don't like it, no problem, but no need to drop us a 1 star. We'll pass on that. Gabe, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it, my man. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, brother. It was awesome being on.